Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin, your host and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers are members of various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction or affliction. Today is the 301st meeting of Rico 12, and man, that's just crazy to say that. And today's speaker for that 301st meeting is Monty M, the Monty Man, a host of the Take 12 recovery radio shows. And I had the amazing and entertaining opportunity to be a guest on the Take 12 recovery show a couple of months back on October 21st. If anyone wants to go listen, I'll put that link in the chat and the show notes of the podcast. And you can listen to any of the other things that they do. They put out, I think, 2 or 3 episodes every week, and it's pretty cool stuff. Monty's topic today is Anonymity Doesn't Mean Secrecy. And I look forward to hearing that message here in a few minutes. But first, for a little bit of business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, and just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcasts that you find at www.rico12.com. And to join in our social communities, check out the chat and the show notes. I'll be putting things in the chat here and the show notes of the podcast. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission to share this message with other addicts and alcoholics wherever they may be. Thanks to all of our spearheads, past, present, and future. And a special thanks this week to Debbie, Mackenzie, Dory, Evan, and Daniel. 'Tis the time of year for giving, and we thank you for these generous donations. If you out there also feel the desire to become a spearhead and support this cause, please visit rico12.com/support or click on the links that'll be in the show notes and the chat for one-time or monthly donation options. Your support, not just financially, but with your word of mouth, makes a difference in keeping us able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our speaker for today, Monty M, and give a little background on him. Monty Meyer, aka the Monty Man, is founder and executive producer of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting and the Take 12 recovery radio shows. With over 20 years in broadcasting and 30 years experience working on the personal staff or the pastoral staff of local congregations and drug and alcohol services. Monty's work is primarily with those who have a desire to become whole through the process of 12-step recovery. Take it away, Monty. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it very, very much. Episode 301. Wow. Wow. Congratulations. That's no small task, man. And I just want to thank you for all that you're doing for the recovery community. Before I ever say anything else here, just thank you. Appreciate it so much. And having you on my show was a joy as well. Well, so I want to qualify a little bit here. So, my name's Monty, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. And let me kind of explain that really quickly. When I say that, sometimes it raises some eyebrows, because that's a whole nother show, right? Recovered versus recovering. But what it simply means is I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It's way more than problems with alcohol. I hear in 12-step meetings often, depending on the meeting, limit your sharing to your problems with alcohol, or you limit your sharing to your problems with narcotics. But I don't have any problems with that anymore. The obsession's been removed. That's not the issue. The issue is my self-seeking ego. And that is something that I'm constantly working on that, we all know what that's like. But I just want to make it really, really clear that I do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not even going so far as to claim membership on this program of any particular 12-step fellowship. What I am, though, is definitely somebody who is in love with the big book of AA, in love with the literature, and in love with the fellowship. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that I'm not claiming membership, nor do I speak for them. What you're going to hear is some stuff from the literature and my overly opinionated opinion. And so the topic of anonymity doesn't mean secrecy. Um, if I were to keep secret my story of experience, strength, and hope, that would be pretty self-centered. And for 18 years I lived with a needle in my arm and a bottle in my mouth. Let's just go put it that way. And everything that comes with that, use your imagination. It probably happened. Um, and it led me down a road that I thought at one point there was no return from. But by the grace and mercy of a loving God, he led me into the room of the 12 steppers, and I'll be forever thankful for that. So anonymity doesn't mean secrecy. I remember walking down the aisle of a grocery store here a few years back, and there was a gentleman turned the corner and was walking the opposite direction toward me, who was an active attender at 12-step fellowship that I had been attending. And I went to acknowledge him, and our eyes met, and he just kind of did this and turned and walked by me. And I'm like, what is up with that? Well, I saw him later that week. I said, hey man, what's going on at the grocery store? He says, well, I don't want people to know that I'm in recovery. What? What? Just by saying hello? So we have some weird ideas sometimes, and I've noticed that kind of thing, that it's not unusual. It really isn't. It's funny though, because with the I won't say new laws, but with the laws that were passed about smoking in public buildings and so forth, most places you go today that are, recovery rooms, you can't smoke in the fellowship hall, right? And so a lot of times I'll have a smoke break. Folks have no problem standing underneath the triangle or the square, or pick your poison, whatever fellowship you're a member of, smoking out in public. And people are driving by, and, it says, the Legion Group of Stockton, California, of Alcoholics Anonymous. They're standing right underneath the sign, But boy, don't tell anybody I'm going to an AA meeting. Don't tell anybody I'm going to an NA meeting. And I understand that, and I respect a person wanting to keep it on the low down. I really, really do. But I think as we're moving into knowing better and doing better, I think we kind of outgrow some of that stuff. And so this is a topic that I really like to reflect on, because if I hadn't heard somebody's story in a public setting, I probably would never have walked through the doors of recovery. That's where I first heard it. Somebody was bold enough to share their story in a public setting, and understood that anonymity doesn't mean secrecy. So what does anonymity mean, if it doesn't mean that? And so I'm going to go down the road here of the mothership, because that's where it kind of all starts, right? And that would be Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm referring to the policies of Alcoholics Anonymous here. So the rule of thumb is that if you're going to claim membership publicly at the level of press, radio, and film, if you're going to do that, that you do not use your first and last name, and you don't use a frontal picture of yourself. So that's the rule of thumb, right? You can use your first name and last initial, you can use your first name, whatever, but you definitely don't use a picture or a photograph or a video or that kind of thing if you're going to claim membership. If you're not claiming membership, then it doesn't apply. If you're not being specific, it doesn't apply. Now, there's a way that you can bring. We're talking about this tradition that states that that we always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. And so I just want to read a section that Dr. Bob, now keep in mind, this is conference approved literature. Now, what do I mean by that? So this comes out of the book, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, right? Conference approved literature doesn't mean, I'm going to get myself in trouble. Conference approved literature does not mean that this is the only literature you can read in an AA meeting. That's not what it means. It means it's approved for use at conferences. That's what it means. So this book is, and what's in it is approved for use at AA conferences. Okay. You can read all sorts of stuff in an AA meeting. You can, and it doesn't go against anything. If it's a group conscience and that's what the group wants to do, they're free to do that. A lot of people don't realize that. But for lack of whatever, this is AA conference approved literature. And this comes from page 264 and 265 of the book, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. Dr. Bob said there were two ways to break the anonymity tradition. Number one, by giving your name at the public level of press or radio. Notice he didn't even say film there. Number two, by being so anonymous that you can't be reached by other drunks. So there's two ways to break that tradition. In an article in the February 1969 Grapevine, Dr. Bob said this about the 11th tradition. We need to maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. Yes, since our tradition of anonymity designates the exact level where the line should be held, it must be obvious to everyone who can read and understand the English language. Dr. Bob's getting a little sarcastic here. If you can understand the English language, guys, right, that to maintain anonymity at any other level is definitely a violation of this tradition. The AA who hides his identity from his fellow AAs by using only a given name violates the tradition just as much as the AA who permits his name to appear in the press in connection with matters pertaining to AA. The former is maintaining his anonymity above the level of press, radio, and film, and the latter is maintaining his anonymity below the level of press, radio, and film. Whereas the tradition states that we should maintain our anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. So, see, that's not my opinion. That comes right from the horse's mouth. That's Dr. Bob in conference-approved literature of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, I don't think that he was trying to come after anybody that was just using their first name in a meeting. I don't think that was his point. I think his point was lighten up. In fact, there's some literature that states that we are to let the public know that we are AAs. Really? Yeah. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. The deal of it is originally back in the day, there were some good reasons why these good old boys weren't giving their first and last name. And one of the reasons given was that if they did, there would be such a high demand for them to speak and to travel that they wouldn't be able to maintain their jobs. And the thing that's so funny about that is most of these guys had lost their jobs at that point. They weren't even working. But I get that. So the purpose for listen, we can't stretch ourselves so thin that it's unhealthy for us. So we've got to, kind of sit in the background a little bit. And besides, our egos can get in the way. The spirit of anonymity has more to do with self-awareness and pride and ego than it does protecting a fellowship. Let me tell you, if the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Celebrate Recovery, Alcoholics for Christ, whoever it is, if the fellowship was going to come crashing down because of tradition violations, it would have happened centuries ago. One of the things that I always find humorous is personal recovery depends upon AA unity. God, I'm glad it doesn't. I'm glad my personal recovery doesn't depend on the unity of that home group, because I'm telling you what, man, that home group isn't always very united. Right? The loony noony isn't always the healthiest place to be. So I get the spirit of it, but sometimes we go a little too far because for whatever reason. So it's important, I think, that we understand that we really need to be out there in the world sharing our stories. We don't have to identify as members. We don't have to say we represent, and we should not. But that doesn't mean we can't share our stories of experience, strength, and hope. There's a lot of speaking engagements that I've attended where the whole topic of AA and NA and the 12 steps doesn't even come up. It's a whole different kind of venue where I'm able to share my story of experience, strength, and hope without even touching on those things. And so I think it's important that we're willing to do that. Now, many years ago, there was a video that came out called Anonymous People. I was so glad to see that arrive on the scene. Basically, people were fed up of being told to shut up, right? Uh, and they came out with their stories, and it's a pretty graphic video, actually. I don't know that I would necessarily sit down with a newcomer and watch it. There's some pretty sketchy stuff in there, but it was important that these people shared their stories. Listen, if people don't know where to find us, if people don't know to hear our stories, how are they going to know? How are they going to know? If not you, then who? Now, in early recovery, I wasn't really ready to be flaying myself open publicly and sharing it, all the deep, dark secrets of my past and that kind of thing. And then when I kind of went overboard. I shared everything and probably not using a whole lot of wisdom, maybe a little too much. And then through the help of a sponsor and a service sponsor and that kind of thing, learned how to kind of hone my craft, so to speak, and be able to know my audience and know when to share and what to share and that kind of thing. But I think it's something that if we've been around, the rooms of the 12 steppers for any length of time, and we're not willing to break through the facade of a misunderstood anonymity tradition to give ourselves way to share our stories with people, I think we're doing people a grave misjustice, and we need to get over ourselves. We really, really do. Listen, you know how we talk about when we were out there drinking and using, we didn't think anybody knew and everybody did know. You know, if you think that nobody knows that you're a better person than you were, I would ask why. Why don't they know? You know, it's important that they do know. And when people say, "Man, when I saw you last, you were just a mess, and now there's a light in your eyes. What's going on?" We need to be willing to share it and say, "Let me tell you a story. You got a minute? You want to have some coffee? Because I'll tell you what, that person may be placed there in your life by our creator for you to share something about your personal story that is going to give them hope or give somebody they love hope. And if we're not willing to do that, if we're going to hide behind the anonymity tradition, shame on us. Shame on us. And so I think we need to step above that thing we don't violate. Listen, here's the rule of thumb. And let me just pick on AA for a minute, but it could be NA, it could be any of these guys. An AA group, an NA group, a CR group, whatever group, has more right to violate a tradition than that organization has the right to punish you for doing so. Let me say that again. And it goes for the individual. An AA member, an NA member, whatever, has more right to violate a tradition than that organization has to punish you for doing so. Now, please don't go out and say, Monty said it's okay to violate traditions. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when we make them law, then we better obey them to the letter. Because once we break them even a little bit, we've broken all of them. So we have to live in a realm of grace here and not be so stuck on ourselves that we totally lose the message that the world needs to hear, that recovery is possible. Recovery is possible. It is possible to actually enter into a state of recovered. and look at, if that isn't possible, what am I doing? So that's kind of my thing on anonymity. It doesn't mean secrecy. Secrets kill and secrets do not heal. And so I think we need to be willing to, not hide behind that stuff. That's kind of my spiel there, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Monty. I really appreciate it. I've got a couple of things here. I love the secrets kill. I've heard the phrase, you're only as sick as your secrets. And just recently, I was talking to my grand sponsor about secrets and just had some really powerful insights into that. So, talk to me a little bit more about maybe an experience in your recovery where a secret almost killed you until you shared it with, the properly appointed authority.
Yeah. So I had and this was during my fourth and fifth step. Excuse me for that. I have a tickle in my throat. Um there was a couple of things that I knew needed to come out on the table, but I thought I was going to take them with me to the grave. I really, really did. I thought there is no way if I share this, it doesn't matter who you are, if you're clergy, if you're a lawyer, anybody that's bound by confidentiality, if you're my sponsor, no matter who you are, if I share this, you're going to run away from me. Now, keep in mind, I was dealing also with abandonment issues, right? So that was a very real threat to me at the time. And my sponsor could tell. I mean, he just, I was doing the fifth step with him, and he was like, "So what aren't you sharing with me?" I'm like, "What makes you think I'm not sharing everything?" He just started laughing. He goes, "Because I'm you." And that resonated with me. I've never forgotten that. He looked me straight in the eye, knee to knee, and he said, "Monty, I'm you. Give it up." And I still just kind of sat there, and he said, "Okay." And then he told me a story about something that he had participated in. Cleared the path. It cleared the path. It was the Me Too movement before the Me Too movement ever existed. He just said, "Me too, man. I get it." Right. And then I was able to lay it out there. But I'm telling you, that one thing was one of the things that kept hooking me and bringing back into active addiction.
Yeah.
Because I was a scared little boy who was growing up to be a scared little boy if I wasn't careful.
Hmm. No, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to remind our live audience here, if you have a question for Monty, please put it in the chat. If you want to remain anonymous in that and you don't want me to read your first name, put a note or direct message me that this is an anonymous question, or I will just read your first name when it comes in. Monty, so I love this topic, and I love that you are the one that's doing this. I mean, you've had 20 years in broadcasting,
Yeah.
30 years working with people in drug and alcohol services. And so what was it that inspired you to break out of that secrecy and into this type of work?
Well, okay, so I was in a 12-step meeting years ago, and this particular I'll just say because I'm not claiming membership, but I was in a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. I had attended a meeting of NA, and somebody handed me the NA basic text and said, "This is our topic," and he had a highlight. "Will you please read it for us?" And I said, "Sure." And I'm going to paraphrase here, but it was basically um, that tired old lie, once an addict, always an addict, will no longer be tolerated by society or the addict himself. The lie is dead, we do recover, right? And it was like two quotes there. And I read that, and then I sat down. And this guy stood up. I'll never forget it. And he goes, "Hey, Monty," he said, "why don't you leave your opinion to yourself? And if you want to spout stuff like that, why don't you start your own talk show?" And everybody giggled and they laughed. And then he sat down. And I'm like, wow. I mean, all I did was read what you asked me to read. Wasn't even sharing my opinion about anything. I mean, gee whiz, man. Uh, and so I came home from that meeting and I had a message on my answering machine by a music manager in Nashville of a recovery recording artist. And nobody heard of recovery recording artists back then. And this lady had seen an email that I had swapped back and forth with one of my sponsees who had moved to Nashville. Somehow or another, she saw it. She did not like what I said in it. And she told her manager, I really don't like this, but man, this would make really good copy. Can you get a hold of this guy and ask him if he's ever thought about, putting stuff on tape or, that kind of. And so she did. She left this voice message. And so I called her back and I went, why am I getting a agent from Nashville calling me? And she shared this with me. And I was like, huh. She goes, I want to put you in touch with a guy named Tom Sumner from Virginia Beach. And I want you to talk to him. And so this guy, Tom, I called him and he said, yeah, man, I can show you how to put stuff on a CD. And I had no idea how to do any of that. And one thing led to another. You had to write code. You had to know how to write code to build a website back then. So he did that for me. And he showed me how to upload audio. Nobody was doing podcasts. They didn't exist. We had MP3 files, which took up a ton of memory on our website. We just have a couple at a time, and people could listen to me spout, my overly opinionated opinion about something. And so we did it like we did one a week. And then my crazy overboard manic self decided, I'm going to do one every day. Well, that didn't last. It didn't last very long. So we've honed it down now to 3 a week. But that's how it started. And man, the anonymity police came out of the woodwork. I mean, they were like, "You can't do this. This is violating the tradition of press, radio, and film." Blah 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 blah. I said, "Wait a minute. You have never, and to this day, I stick by this. You will never hear me say on any of my broadcasts." Because I use my first name, my last name, my radio name, which is the Monty Man, which was given to me by a friend of mine. I certainly use video in my picture. So I am very adamant that I will never, ever, ever say on the air what fellowship I'm a member of. Now, I'll say I was at an AA meeting and I heard this wonderful quote. I was at an NA meeting and man, they had a picnic afterwards. The fellowship was great. I was at a Celebrate Recovery meeting, but I never tell you what fellowship I'm a member of. If you guess it, that's on you. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I have guests on the show that will do that. That's on them. And I don't censor them for doing that. That's not my job. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and it just kind of took off.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that backstory. I really appreciate it, Monty.
Yeah.
All right. Next question I have for you is, you talked about when you first came into the rooms, you didn't share anything. And then you went to probably oversharing. Talk to us about the wisdom of where is enough and how do you determine that in your own life?
Yeah. So the no sharing or little sharing came from fear. Fear is it is a power driver of ego. You know, I love the acronym false evidence appearing real. That's a real thing. But I was scared. I was fearful because I'd never really done that before. And then when I learned that it was a safe place, and then if somebody did share my story, I was going to be okay, that kind of thing. But then when I moved into oversharing, that was also, but that was a different kind of ego. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was just being boastful, because I would sit in a meeting of the 12 steppers and I'd look across the room. I'd be hearing some guy share and I'm thinking to myself, well, thank God I'm not as bad as that guy, or I'd go the other direction. Man, you haven't heard nothing, group, until you've heard my story. Let me tell you what, I did this and this and this. And you know what I was doing, man? I was trying to get my ego, stroked is what I was doing. Because once again, I was afraid that I wasn't going to be popular. I was afraid that I wasn't going to be accepted. So I got to be worse than you, you know. And what I did, what really kind of knocked me into finding the balance with all that, man, my poor throat, sorry, was I was sitting in church and our pastor had he had really goofed up and nobody knew it. And he stood in front of the whole congregation and he fell to his knees weeping and shared the details of his issue that he had done. That it shocked me. Not that he had done what he had done. That did not shock me. It shocked me that he shared this big old thing, right, with all these people. And I immediately knew that was not wisdom, that he needed to make amends. He needed to do it in the right way. He probably didn't know how to. And that was his only course, was to just fillet himself open before 200 people, you know. But I knew immediately that that's not wise, man. That just isn't wise. And I thought, wow, have I done that? Yeah. And the answer was yes, I've done that. And that there's got to be a balance here. You've got to know your audience. What I share at a adult and teen challenge rehabilitation center is going to be different than what I share, at a 12-step convention. What I share giving my personal testimony on a Wednesday night at church is probably going to be different than what I share at the treatment center. So we have to find balance in that. But there's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of power in observation. You know what I mean? A lot of power in observation. And if we will observe and watch, I think we'll be able to kind of teach ourselves what's appropriate and what's not.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that and going through that. I think that's very helpful for me and for hopefully for a lot of other people who hear this. You mentioned that the main message, the main story and message of the 12 steps is that recovery is possible. In fact, in the big book, one of the first lines in one of the first chapters is, we are 100 men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous who have recovered.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about recovered and recovery. I know you touched on it in the early bit, but why is that the main message of the 12 steps in your experience?
So let me go back, rewind a minute. So the sole purpose of, and let's, because let's camp out on the mothership, because everything kind of stems from there. Okay. So from what I understand, the sole purpose of any AA group, and this would be the sole purpose of any AA member who has had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. And by the way, you cannot have a spiritual awakening as a result of steps you haven't done. You may have a spiritual awakening as a result of something else, but not as a result of steps you haven't done. So if you've had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, right, as an individual member or as an AA group, your sole purpose is to help other people develop a relationship with a power greater than themselves to help them solve their problem. That's the sole purpose. If the group isn't doing that, you might want to find another group. If you're not doing that, you might want to check yourself. So why do we want to help people develop a relationship with a power greater than themselves? So they can recover. For what purpose? So they can share the message to help others recover. That's the reason. That's the purpose. Why are you in this treatment program, Fred? Well, I want my consequences to change. No, you're here to learn how to be of maximum service to God and the people he puts in your life. That's why you're here. Surprise. Why are you in this meeting? That's why you're here. Surprise. You may not know it yet, but it's coming. So the difference between recovered versus recovering. So I like to give the analogy, the peanut allergy analogy. I'm allergic to peanuts. If I put peanuts in my body in any form, whether you're cooking with peanut oil or whether I'm eating peanuts out of the planter's box, right? I'm going to swell up in my neck area and I'm not going to be able to breathe. They're going to haul me off to the hospital and they're going to stick me with an EpiPen. And while I'm in the hospital and that medication is doing its job, I am in recovery from the peanut allergy, right? We can all agree on that, I think, right? So once My breathing has normalized. Once the problem has been resolved, right? Or removed, the big book says the problem has been removed. Okay. Then I have recovered from the allergic reaction to the peanut allergy. I'm no longer in recovery from it. I've recovered from it. And they sign me out. I get in my car and I go home, and somebody else who's allergic to peanuts goes to grab some and I go, whoa, dude, wait. Let me share with you my story here. You don't have to go down that road. So, am I still allergic to peanuts? Yeah, you bet I am. Will I always be allergic to peanuts? Yeah. Did I recover from the damage of the peanut allergy? Yeah. Am I a recovered person allergic to peanuts? You betcha. Have I recovered from the damage, alcohol and narcotics and all the other stuff that goes with it, the addiction to that stuff, the damage it caused? Yes. If I go to a restaurant, I eat bad shrimp, I'm going to get sicker than a dog. And while I'm getting sick and trying to get back to normal, right? I'm in recovery from that. But after a couple of days, I've recovered from it. You know, doesn't mean I stop going to restaurants, but I'm not going to eat bad shrimp again. So we do recover. We do, I have my sponsees when they're looking in the recovery literature of the program that I'm in. I have them highlight every time they see the word recovered, recover. I have them highlight it. It's all over the place. This idea that I'm always going to be recovering is it's going to keep me in the hospital for the rest of my life, and I'm never going to be able to go out in the real world and share this miracle because I'm sick, sick, sick. We've heard that, right? We're sick, sick, sick. Stop it. Stop it. The good news is you can recover. Doesn't mean I'm cured. Cured means the allergy to it is gone. It means it's the illness is gone. It's completely gone. Recovered means the symptoms are gone.
Mm.
I'm not stealing from mama's purse anymore. I'm not pulling the disappearing act. I'm not waking up in weird places. I'm not waking up with weird people. The symptoms are gone. I've recovered, but it's not cured. It's two different things.
Yeah, thank you
I
for
hope that
walking.
helps. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for walking through that. Monty, I have a comment and question from Mike in our live audience. Mike says, great points here. In this age, resistance to discussing one's recovery journey and fellowships publicly seems more like a hindrance to sharing our message rather than wisdom. I've loved hearing public stories of recovery and fellowship involvement. For example, Russell Brand's experience published in book form. It's very public. I don't see a problem with this kind of publication. Does such a case break this tradition of anonymity? And then he says, personally, I'm afraid that this tradition may get in the way of accessibility of recovery fellowships and tools at a petty cost. So, what are your thoughts on that, Monty?
Yeah, once again, you're not breaking any traditions if you don't claim membership. If Russell said, I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, particularly if he said, let me discuss with you um, what Alcoholics Anonymous believes in this area of whatever, and I am representing them as I'm sharing this, then that's a tradition violation. To claim membership publicly, I am a member of, yeah, that's a tradition violation. But again, and I'm not saying Russell's done that. I've heard Russell speak, and I'll be real honest with you. I love what he has to say, but he lost me through all the profanity. I just, it's like a great message, but you lost me halfway through because all your cussing, man. Come on, clean it up. I think he's getting better with that. And I love the guy. Uh, but he's reaching a lot of people. But again, even if he did claim membership, he has more right to do that than AA has a right to punish him for doing so. You know, it does it cause a problem? Maybe. Listen, once again, Alcoholics Anonymous has survived a whole ton of stuff. I mean, there has been copyright violations. There's been lawsuits. There's some lawsuits going on right now. there's, the prudent reserve in AA is like $20 million or something. And if you read any of the stuff that that Bill Wilson wrote, especially in The Language of the Heart, his grapevine writings, he was really concerned that AA didn't get too rich. You know what I mean? Uh, yeah, I mean, there's stuff going on all the time. Listen, we got to remember who's in charge here. God is. Bill was a shyster and he cheated on his wife. You don't know that for one thing. But so what? I'm glad he was a shyster. I'm glad he had the issues that he had. I'm glad he was a mess. Me too. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Is it a petty thing? I'm a singleness of purpose person too. And we can get into arguments all about all that, and alcohol and drug and blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I think we need to put the sword down and just move forward, man.
No, that's powerful. And Monty, I liked what you said there, and it just slipped my mind. I had a good question for you, and it is gone.
Sorry.
And no, that's good. That's good. It'll come back if it was meant to be. But you talked about earlier on, you said, if not you, then who? Who's going to share the message if you don't? If you've experienced this spiritual change as a result of these steps, if I'm not willing then to, well, maybe sponsor, give back by sponsoring, share my story when appropriate and in the appropriate place, how is somebody else going to hear about that? Let's develop that just a little bit further, if you don't mind.
Yeah, if not you, then who? I think it comes down to, do we really know really what our journey's purpose is? Most people walk through the doors of recovery of the 12-step rooms not by choice. I mean, I don't know anybody that just said, yeah, I'm getting shaven and getting all cleaned up, put my tie on and my cologne, and I'm going down to the AA meeting hall. Never been there. I'm really looking forward to this. It was usually, most of the time, it was circumstances, consequences, things like that. Court ordered or not, whatever. Maybe the little woman said, you're going or you're not coming home. Whatever. So we really don't, we have a limited understanding when we first, start this thing of really what our purpose is. Most of us didn't even know. We'd lost our purpose if we ever had one. And so it's a process, man. And I think one of the things that we need to stop doing is stop pussyfooting around when it comes to teaching people how to apply and implement the 12 disciplines of those steps. We're going to do a step a month. No, you don't have time. People are dying. You got to get back to what like Clarence Snyder was doing, and Dr. Bob. You can take these people through this. I can take a sponsor through the steps in 3 days. 3 days. And let's get them to a place where they can have a spiritual awakening and make a connection with the divine, with God. So then they will learn in that process what their purpose is. It's a new purpose. And when we do that, there's that thing in the big book I'm terrible about chapter and verse, but nothing will ensure immunity from drinking than working with another alcoholic. Service work won't keep you sober because you'll burn out on service work. And if you're not connected with a power greater than yourself, that's what keeps you sober. You'll start drinking or using again. Because I've seen people do that. But I'll tell you what, if you have a connection with God and he's guiding your direction and your path, right? Working with other people is absolutely essential. Not for the purpose of keeping you sober or keeping you clean, but because that's what you're called to do. And as a result, you get to stay sober and clean, but that's not the reason. If it's your reason in the beginning, yeah, I get it. But if it doesn't become a higher calling than that, then you've kind of missed the point. And so I think we learn the importance of giving ourselves away. We hear it all the time. You can't keep what you have unless you give it away, right? It's a biblical principle too. And so, in fact, in most major faiths and religions, most of them in their sacred writings, somewhere in there, there is cause for understanding that it's not about you, it's about giving back to the universe, and giving back to mankind. Um, so, I think it's a basic instinct of man too to want to be part of other people's lives. It's just we lost our way. That's all, and we're just getting back on it. But I think these things, I think all these attributes that we start to build come as a result of understanding this step work. And if we don't have somebody to help us through that, we're going to come out sideways.
Yeah. Thank you, Monty. So as we start wrapping this up, I do remember the question I was going to ask you, and it's a good one. Well, I don't know if the question is good, but the thought is good that I'm really interested to hear your take on. You talked about, you said, thank goodness Bill was a shyster, Bill W was a shyster. And you talked about your pastor, how when he opened up, he said that's probably not wise, but I don't think any less of him for that, or I don't blame him for what happened there. I don't know if blame is the right word, but I understand that. How has that compassion for others' imperfections developed as you have worked the steps and applied these principles in all that you do?
It's made me very aware of the amount of character defects that I actually own. uh, I think working with other people and being able to sit across from them knee to knee and look them in the eye and say, yeah, yeah, buddy, I get it. I get it. You know why? Because I'm you, just like my sponsor did. Um, it's very humbling. And one thing that a lot of people do, because a lot of people attack Bill Wilson, but the one thing that you'll learn about him if you do any research at all is he was incredibly humble. And he was very aware of how important it was that he stay that way because he knew his ego was huge, you know. And so, if anything, it keeps you humble. It keeps you humble and to have empathy for other people. We did a show here a few weeks ago called How Many Chances Do You Give an Addict? And a lot of responses on Facebook, tons actually. And for the most part, the answer came back as many as it takes 70 times 7, 70 times 7 million, that kind of thing. And I think when we have the attitude, look at, we're dealing with when it comes to addiction, when it comes to alcoholism, and a lot of people don't agree with this, but the truth of the matter is we're dealing with a medical issue that has a spiritual solution. And if we can look at it through the eyes of medicine and trust the science on this thing, we realize that these aren't horrible people trying to get good. They're people who are sick that need to get well, that need to get healthy. Then our compassion grows and our empathy grows. And we got to remember from whence we came. There's no normies. There's no such thing as a normie. What's that? Where do we ever come up with that? Everybody's got something where the tail's wagging the dog. And once we realize that, we've got empathy for the guy on the street corner with this sign, I'll work for food, all the way to the pastor of our church or the rabbi or whoever, and everything in between.
Yeah, thank you for walking through this, Monty. I really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
No, I just don't don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever, ever, ever give up. If you got a loved one that's going through hell and back, don't ever, ever, ever give up. You may have to set boundaries. You may have to close some doors, but never lock it. Never lock it. You can't come in and out like you did before, but I'm not locking you out completely. We never give up on the addict or the alcoholic. We never give in to the addict or alcoholic. And we should be a beacon of hope for anybody, for everyone in some way, shape, or form. And if we'll do that, at the end of our journey, God will say, well done, good and faithful servant.
Thank you, Monty, so much for a fantastic Rico 12 weekly speaker meeting. If
Thanks,
anybody
buddy.
out there has additional questions for Monty or would like to send something in, get in contact with him, please send me an email at rico12pod@gmail.com and I can get you in contact with him. And you can also send questions that way if you would like. If you haven't already done so, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's a powerful way to work step 12 and get the message out to more people who may need to hear this and just don't know where to look. Next Friday, we'll hear from Daniel B., and his topic will be ninth step amends with self and with higher power. So stay tuned on our WhatsApp community, on our email list for more information on that. And if you aren't already on the email list, send me an email at rico12pod@gmail.com. I'll get you on that email list. No problem there. It's not an inconvenience to me. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with the 11th step prayer from the AA Cleveland group that Monty is going to say for us.
Can I do a shameful plug real quick?
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay. If you'd like to tune into our podcast, it's take12radio.com is the website, and you can subscribe for fun and for free on any of the major podcasting platforms listed there, take12radio.com. And you can also hear the Rico 12 podcast because he's part of our Recovery Podcast Network at Take 12 Radio as well. So this is definitely has become my favorite prayer when it comes to the world of the 12 steps and the people in it. And this is from Clarence Snyder and the boys in the Cleveland group. And this is how it goes. Dear God, I pray to keep my connection with you open and clear from the confusion of daily life. Through my prayers and meditation, I ask especially for freedom from self-will, rationalization, and wishful thinking. I pray for the guidance of correct thought and positive action. Help me to trust you and love others. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Monty. And we'll have all of the links to the Take 12 Radio in the show notes of the podcast, so you can find it there also. All right, remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
There was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to scream, but the sound never came out. So he reached for the bottle to wash the pain away, 'cause what he wanted so badly was to live a different way. And all of his problems and all of his pain filled up the puddle and rose with the rain. His ship kept on sinking to the bottom of the lake, and he knew for certain that he was just a fake, just a fake. Was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to share, but only lies ever came out. So he reached for the needle to numb the pain inside, and the truth that he yearned for shriveled up and died. And all of his problems inside of his mouth as he read from the book, only truth spilled out. So he reached for a power to help him through the night. 'Cause what lives in the darkness dies in the night. Yeah, what lives in the darkness dies